Bonjour, bonjour. It is so delightful to be here with you this evening. We're very, very excited to be diving into some very interesting and fun science, some science that will quite literally shift your body. I'm here with our Dean of Students for our DNA University, Dr. Lara Varden. And before her and I start chatting, I want to take just a moment to ask you all a question. And I want you to think about this. We're sincerely going to give you some time where we kind of stare into the camera as you think about this. Um, I want you to think about a person in your life that you are very, very grateful for and to. This can be in the sense of someone that's been with you the entire course of your life and has supported most of your life. Or this could be someone today. There was maybe someone in line at the checkout that was very kind to you. I want you to think about someone in your life that means a lot to you and you're very grateful for. Hmm. I was not thoughtful enough to think of setting a timer, so I hope that was at around 30 seconds. But something I was really marinating and enjoying, and Dr. Lara, I wonder if you could echo this, and I'd love to hear this as well from people in the chat. As I was thinking through, this person actually turned out to be a few people. It felt really good. It felt really nice. How was that for you? What was the experience?
This feeling of appreciation that I am connected, that I have people who have my back, that I
Mhm.
love, and I'm just so thankful for.
It felt good though, didn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
security thing. It really is. It's that connection.
yeah, yeah. And I wonder, you had this really fun exercise, and I wonder if you can share that with our audience tonight before we jump into the joys of the science and the application that is gratitude. Yeah, I wonder if you can share that exercise. And I promise the audience there's point and purpose to this all. I think gratitude can kind of be sloughed off as like, oh, it's just positive thinking, or oh, it's something woo-woo, and there's so much more to it. So Dr. Lara, I wonder if you can offer that exercise to the end of bettering our health by way of gratitude.
Well, what I would like you to do for our audience, and actually, you know what, Dr. Krista, I think you and I should participate too. That for those people that you are thankful for,
Mhm.
and this activity, it would be helpful if they were living and generally would have a phone to be able to receive. Because what I'd like you to do is, I would like you to get your phones out or your tablets, or if your email is right there and open, I want you to take a moment and I want you to send a heartfelt gratitude text or email to that person. Do that right now. I'm doing it. So let's take a moment and do that right now.
Quite literally. I love this so very much. And so as Dr. Lara is just finishing up there, and we're gonna dive into a few things. I would love to know and to hear a little bit about the people that you're grateful for, that person that you chose, and maybe even a small excerpt of the text you sent, whatever is audience friendly, just in the chat there. But so let's start talking about gratitude, because I think often it's dismissed as, I should be grateful, maybe at Thanksgiving, and, kind of it can get lost in the busyness of the day. And there's a lot of science that actually says that's not valid. There's a lot of science that talks about gratitude, and which has been studied through scientific ways, right? Can influence the body. Dr. Lara, I wonder if we could briefly just kind of list different ways that it can impact health.
Well, when we're talking about gratitude, because it really comes from the thoughts, where thoughts go, energy flows.
Yeah.
And it specifically is related and can impact neurobiology, mental health. So thinking about that, there's actually a brain activation that occurs with gratitude in different areas and regions of the brain that are associated with emotional regulation and reward processing. So, for those of you who have our DNA 360 tests, looking in that mood and behavior aspect, remember that it's in the context of things, how you look at things. There is no good or bad mood or behavior profile. It is how that profile is utilized, or the environment in which the perception occurs. And with gratitude, which is the prefrontal cortex that it affects in the brain, that this reward processing to upregulate, meaning to increase the serotonin and dopamine, which can foster those emotions, positive feelings, reducing negative ones. And this actually information has been in research for many years, decades, but some of the most recent information was a meta-analysis that was done just last year in the International Journal of Applied Positive Psychology. So this is real science, guys.
I love it. I love it. There's another part of the brain too, to also like bring this a little bit more into the body outside of just mental health. Positive thought, or especially gratitude thought, will impact the hypothalamus. And as we know, the hypothalamus, this little happy little part of the brain tucked into the middle somewhat, a little bit lower, it has incredible influence over a lot of hormone, and namely things that will help with circadian stress, with sleep. So as you exercise gratitude, and this is an important element, we're going to talk about that in a sec, as you exercise gratitude, you're exercising these parts of the brain that influence the body, that influence how you feel about your day. Yeah, I think that's very neat. And that, to me, even that's such an, even as someone that has been studying this for in and around 20 years, that boggles my mind that the way I think can quite literally have a physical impact on how my body is set up. Dr. Lara, what are some other areas, what are some other things that gratitude has been studied at an academic level? So again, we're not pulling, it probably does this at an academic level, at a scientific level. What else does gratitude influence within the body?
Well, it definitely helps to reduce stress. I mean, we're talking all different kinds of stress, but when you're talking about the vagal nerve, vagal tone, research has shown that gratitude helps to reduce stress by shifting that focus from a negative to positive aspects. And there was a study published in the Journal of Research in Personality that is a seminal paper, actually, and it found they specifically looked at people writing gratitude letters. So similar to the text, just something short, can actually influence. But in their case, it was a letter. It actually reduced cortisol levels. It improved overall mental health in the participants. There was a 2021 study published in the Journal of Happiness Studies. I love that. That demonstrated how gratitude interventions significantly reduced perceived stress in
Mhm.
participants, suggesting that gratitude practices can be useful in stress management strategies. So we're not just, looking at the subjective, our perceived stress, which honestly is really, really important, and we should never discount how we feel. But we're also looking at and the objective data, cortisol levels, inflammation markers, things like that are also directly affected.
Which in turn, and again, this has been studied, have downstream impacts in the sense of gratitude practices have been associated with better sex hormone profiles, right? In the sense of better hormone levels, more favorable hormone, androgen, estrogen levels, largely, and I think the mechanism is yet to be understood, but largely in part to the regulation of inflammation. It will down-regulate inflammation, and the regulation of cortisol, that stress hormone that we know will ultimately kind of gunk up other processes, other mechanisms within the body. Yeah.
And there's another important hormone, oxytocin.
Mm.
Yes, oxytocin. I love this because
Mm.
it really is considered the love molecule. It is a molecule that is released in a mother, in with their child, their newborn child, when they are breastfeeding, because it actually helps with that connection, that bonding. It is released when we give each other hugs.
Mhm.
Did you know that there was actually a study that showed the amount of hugs you should give and receive a day is no less than 9 or 10 to
Oh.
get, a great significant boost, in oxytocin. So go out and hug people. Hug your
We want
family, hug your friends. I'm a hugger. I love it.
I love that. I know, and it's not to get too tawdry, but it's
Yeah.
also been studied as a hormone that's released postcoitally, which is the fancy way of saying after sex. So it's one of those ones, if I'm hearing it correctly, between breastfeeding mothers, between people hugging and embracing one another, and then partners strengthening their bond. Oxytocin, as well as in the mind when you think about things you are grateful for, there is a comfort and a bonding that biochemically happens. Is that what I'm hearing?
Oh, absolutely. Because they really have researched it in its ability to contribute to feelings of trust, empathy, connection.
Mhm.
So that's very important, especially considering we are social creatures. And the longest running research study done by Harvard, it's in its it's 83 years that it's in the running of it.
Mhm.
The whole study was about happiness and longevity. And they found that the number one thing that contributed to happiness and longevity wasn't diet, wasn't lifestyle.
Yeah,
It was quality relationships.
yeah, yeah. And I think as we at the DNA Company, through a lot of, these webinars, this offering to our community, this engagement with community, we want to talk about a little bit of a gratitude challenge, and a way of exercising this so that we can contribute to longevity and kind of community wellness. But before we kind of get into it, Dr. Lara and I have prepared a back and forth for those, just to kind of to highlight a little bit of something here. So Lara, with your permission, because we've already discussed this, I have a question. Can you do 50 push-ups?
Not at this moment.
Do,
Okay, continue because I've got something to say.
do you think it would be possible that you could do 50 push-ups?
Absolutely.
And how would you go about that? If I said, hey, it's now your job to figure out to do 50 push-ups, how are you going to go about that?
Practice, practice, practice.
So how would you practice? What would you do?
I would start to see how many I could do, which
Got it.
actually I have.
Ooh, and
Sadly to say, I was a little disappointed, but here is a good challenge. It would be a matter of doing it regularly,
yeah,
daily,
yeah.
and just increasing that strength. Uh, you know, uh, Obviously allowing time for rest and recovery, because I don't want to push too much, but do that hormetic stress, the
Yeah.
EU stress. So stressing ourselves to build stronger.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So kind of, and to the end, what is built through that, not only through that daily practice, not only is the ability to do those 50 push-ups, you're probably getting some chest, some arm muscle, but separate to that, there's a lot of other benefits that come from kind of pushing yourself through 50 push-ups, aren't there?
Absolutely. There, first of all, just the fact of having a goal and working toward it
Mm,
is a reward, which helps to release dopamine, because every day that I do it in practice,
yeah.
like I said, this is going to be one of my challenges because you got me thinking here. Okay, so
Dangerous
before
tasking.
before we did this, I actually got on the floor and did some push-ups.
No way. Where you
Yes,
at?
I did. Sadly, it was only 15, but
Hey, hey,
not
there's
bad.
nothing sad about that. That's
Not
amazing.
not bad. Well, I used to do a lot more, but anyway. So I actually did that. And it it made me realize, going, you know what? I'm going to take up the challenge. And that in itself gave me a little boost, going, ooh,
Hmm.
let's do a little challenge. I mean, it's fun. It doesn't take very long, but the progress, because I have done this before, not necessarily just for push-ups, but
Yeah,
to work on things.
yeah,
When I was a figure skater, when I was a violinist, I had to practice to get better, to get stronger. So having that goal, um, is, it really puts forth the effort and the excitement and the ability for me to do that. So there's a shift in the emotional and hormonal aspect of doing that, because when we exercise, when they say the runner's high, when you go for a run,
hmm,
that's anandamide. Okay. And of course, there are also others, but that's considered, one of the runner's high molecules that give you that. So as I'm doing this, even thinking about it
hmm,
is releasing hormones of
hmm.
that excitement and happiness and joy. And maybe a little bit of like, but that's okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
where I want to offer to the audience we're going with this is this idea that can Dr. Lara do 50 push-ups today? The answer is no, but with practice and kind of increasing her, that daily focus and discipline, that's somewhere that she can get. And so the idea here, and this is the challenge we would invite you in, it's going to be, an approximately a 40-day challenge, because we want to meet with you guys again in about 40 days, but we want to do a gratitude challenge. We want to treat gratitude, the practice of gratitude, truly like an exercise, where it's something that every single day you're going to be incorporating into your life. Right. And we have a lovely little list of ways that you can do this. You can pick from the list. We're going to go over that in a second. But effectively, our 40-day challenge here is once a day, you can pick that time of day. I'm going to be doing it in the morning. I know Dr. Lara loves doing it in the evening. But once a day, we want you to pick a gratitude activity. Okay. Something we go through. There's different types. Don't worry. It's not just going to be meditation. But it is to the end of, we want you to be practicing this. And in 40 days, we want you to come back, and we're going to host effectively a town hall where we allow anyone to be able to take the mic and say, hey, for 40 days, I've practiced gratitude, and I've noticed that maybe my sleep is better. I've noticed that maybe I feel better. I've noticed that maybe I'm not getting as sick as I used to, or as frequently as I used to. We kind of want to be curious with, if we hold the practice of gratitude, where can that take us, right? Because it's a muscle. There's quite literally neuroplasticity that can be encouraged. Neuroplasticity meaning the changing of your brain, right? Your brain, the way it's circuited. Yeah, there we go. It is so close. It's the end of my day, everyone.
Well,
The way
what
it's
fires together, wires together.
exactly.
And it is in practice, and that's why we brought up the discussion about me doing push-ups, because in building the muscle, well, how do you build the muscle? Through practice, through daily or regular, I should say, regular practice. The brain works the same way. And if you put into practice having gratitude, it becomes easier, it becomes
Yeah.
stronger, it shifts, changes biologically. And this is what we want you all to have an understanding, an intimate understanding and feeling in that type of change that can truly happen, which is amazing.
I think too, I think often too, to your point, what you do, you become. And I think too, I knew a lot of, when I was younger, I knew a lot of ballerinas. And, they would go to practice and they would be very disciplined and dedicated. And now knowing certain body postures, I can pick ballerinas out on the street, not because they are practicing ballet, but because often when ballerinas pick up, they splay their feet a little bit, right? It's first position, or maybe I'm clearly not a ballerina here, but the way they shift their feet. And so it becomes almost a muscle memory. And what we're offering is, by exercising your gratitude, something that you're doing every day, it becomes a muscle memory, and it's something that you'll bring out onto the streets with you. It's not something that's just going to stay in that hour, or the 5 or 10 minutes that you offer it in the morning or the evening. It becomes something, a way of life for you. And that there is where the health benefits are going to spring from, right? The way you strengthen and use different parts of your brain, that is where the strength of gratitude is going to come from. So I wonder if we can go through the different gratitude practices. Dr. Lara and I met before, and we were very specific because we wanted to ensure there were different practices for different sorts of people, right? Not everyone wants to be meditating. Not everyone's going to want to be writing in a journal. We have different activities. And so we'll talk through them. Maybe Lara, you and I ping pong through the different sorts, tag your it sort of styles. And so listen to these, listen to what resonates with you, and see if you'd be open to committing to practicing one of these once a day for 40 days, and then coming back to us and sharing what shifted within your life. As a heads up, since fun things always motivate people, there's going to be prizes. If you come back and you share about this, you'll be entered into a draw and you're going to win some fun swag. So why don't we kick things off of the different, Lara, would you like to go, or Dr. Lara, would you like to go first? And why don't you offer one of the first way that one could practice gratitude?
Well, one way that I actually offer several of my clients is gratitude journaling. And
Mm,
really, it's a matter of writing down the things that you are grateful for each day.
yeah.
This generally, I like to have a beautiful journal. I have a few of them. Not necessarily just some, scrappy notepad. These are beautiful things that you are writing down. So you should write them in something beautiful.
Hmm.
So get a lovely, meaningful journal. Get a pen that writes beautifully. And then exactly.
My favorite is pen. Oh, it's so fancy.
Yes, some DNA company swag. Get a pen that you like to write with. And during the day, pick the time, whatever time that will be consistent for you. And just write down, even starting off with one thing that you are truly grateful for.
Mhm.
And try to be specific. As you are going from day to day, don't just say, oh, I'm grateful for my family. And granted, yes, you may be grateful for your family, but be even more specific. What exactly are you grateful for a member of your family? And I'll tell you, when you really start thinking about it, it's so easy to come up with so many wonderful things, but it really puts it in visual to say, wow,
Mm.
there's so much to be grateful for. So I really like the benefits of having a gratitude journal. And there's even scientific evidence to show and back this up. that includes differences in increased well-being. It reduces the stress. It improves sleep quality. Oftentimes, I will have my clients do it in the evening before they go to bed. So that way they can lay their heads down in a positive mental state. So,
Yeah.
what do you have for us?
But I'm gonna flip to one that is not writing. We have quite a few on here that are writing. This isn't. This is something called a gratitude visit. And so what a gratitude visit is, it's an in-person verbalized way of expressing gratitude to someone. And so this can be something, and I wouldn't suggest this on a daily, but maybe once a week. This could be something where you sincerely sit down and think through like, oh, wow, my best friend has just been here for me through everything. I'm going to go over and I'm going to go and express my gratitude. Maybe I'll bring cookies or something, but I'm going to go over and really articulate to my friend. The purpose of my visit is to be grateful and thankful for you, but on a smaller scale, because again, we want to build up this muscle. We want this to be something you can take into your day to day, and you can't necessarily go visiting with your bestie every day. The other way could be just verbally as you're engaging in the world, be it through Zoom meetings, be it at the checkout, expressing gratitude to someone who's made a positive contribution to your day, right? So maybe that's someone who's holding the door, actually pausing and saying, hey, thanks. That means a lot that you noticed me and held the door for me. Or maybe, it's your partner in the morning if they make you coffee, pausing and being like, wow, that, coffee makes my day better. And you just offered something like that. So thank you. So a gratitude visit or a gratitude moment where you're sincerely engaging with someone and articulating what you're grateful for and that you're grateful for them doing that for you. All right.
I'm going to add a third option here that kind of works off with the gratitude journal, but instead of writing it, to verbalize it. So I'm gonna marry the two.
Oh, fun.
This is something that I do every single night when I lay my head on the pillow.
Mm-hmm.
I actually say 3 things I am grateful for that day.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's very much like the gratitude journal, but I'm not writing it. I am actually verbalizing it, because when we put voice and energy into it, it goes out. We hear it auditorily, we think it, we say it, and that can do a lot. But 3 things that you can say at the end of the day when you're laying your head on your pillow that you are grateful for.
I like that. I like that utterance. Yeah. So, and in particular for those that aren't, the pen and paper sort or the sort that want to be engaging with people, that's a very private, lovely thing that you could be doing. The next one I have here is for those that are a little bit more visual and like something to see and maybe touch and play with. Um, and so this is an activity that requires a little bit of energy up front, but then can be carried on for forevermore. So for our challenge, 40 days, maybe taking 40 little scraps of paper, maybe 20 scraps of paper, and on those pieces of paper, writing down things that you're grateful for. So for example, mine would be, it's summer here. I love the feeling of the sun on my skin. And so that would be something I'd be grateful for. Another thing is I love the smell of coffee. I only get one per day because my body only takes so much caffeine, but coffee is my favorite smell in the world. And so things like that, I'd write those little tidbits on pieces of paper and then putting them in a jar. And once a day, pulling from that jar and then reflecting on that thing and how much that contributes to your life. It makes your life feel a little bit better and more cozy, right? It adds to that cozy of your life. So a gratitude jar, right? That moment of not only creating all those moments, thinking through things you can be grateful for, but then each day pulling and having that moment where you think about that thing that you're very grateful for. Yeah.
I want to actually even supplement on that.
Hmm.
There are things that you could write on those strips of paper that you put in the jar and open back up and reflect on. Include things that you have done in your life you are happy about, things that you do well. Okay. Like, For example, like I played violin, I mentioned that. Okay. And I was
Mhm.
quite good at it. So I could write,
Mhm.
I was a good violinist. That's
Mm.
an accomplishment. And that is something that I am saying is wonderful about me. Because one of the things about gratitude is that we can show gratitude and tell others that we appreciate them and we have gratitude for them. But we should also take that mirror and give gratitude to ourselves. So, you know, I'm sure that there is something that you can find in yourself, something that you did, kindness or work that you've accomplished. It's okay to praise yourself and find the good within you and reflect on that.
Mm. I love that. I love that. Yeah. Is there another gratitude practice that you'd like to go over? I have another one if I can.
Oh, actually, well, I'll let you hop in and
Sure. My next one, and I think this is in particular, is watching the chat as people were thinking through like who they're grateful for. And a few people said like, oh, like the person I'm grateful for isn't here anymore. And so this is a beautiful activity that can enable you to connect with the people you're grateful for who are currently in your life or maybe no longer in the sense that they've passed, or maybe it's a past relationship that you guys aren't in touch with anymore. But the idea of a gratitude letter, right? Or a gratitude email for the thumb warriors out there, but the idea of pausing once a day and for maybe 5 minutes, writing down a note, text message, a letter, whatever your preferred communication is. And this note doesn't necessarily have to be sent, but it does need to be written. And so within that note, saying like, hey, I am so grateful for your current presence, your past presence in my life. Here's what I learned. Here's why you're so precious to me. Here's how this has shifted my life. Really, that reflection of how that person, through that period of time, through their influence in your life, have shifted things to the better. And again, this is something that you can send if you want to, if you think it's appropriate, or it could be something you kept private. And, I'm curious for especially those people that sent texts at the top of the hour, have you gotten any texts back that are like, yo, thanks, appreciate it? I'm curious because by sending this by however, snail mail, carrier pigeon, text message, whatever it might be, that invites people to engage with you. And to Dr. Lara's point, that foundation of community and that foundation of happiness. Yeah, yeah. I'd love, and especially if anyone's gotten notes back, I'd love to hear that. I think it'd be really neat real time
I
to hear.
was just going to say, we don't mind. Take a moment right now. Check your phone. Check it. Check
Yeah.
your email. Did you get your a message back? I did.
Oh, I haven't checked my phone yet.
Yes. Let us know if you did. You don't have to say what it was or who it was, but if you got a message back, just write yes in the chat.
Mm. Yeah, and I'm seeing a few comments in the sense of um, gratitude sometimes can be an exercise of acknowledging grief, etc. And so I really encourage, especially if you're thinking of perhaps sending or writing a note to someone that you're grateful that's no longer with us, right? The art maybe of doing something with that note in honoring of them. So a lot of First Nations will burn certain things to allow that the smokes to be carried to those that we care for. Some people will put it quite literally, put it in a bottle, toss it into the ocean, something that's special and sacred to you, or maybe offering it to a gravestone, whatever that looks like for you, and I think this lends lovely um lends lovely maybe to the next thought of how we can practice gratitude. Oh, this is probably my favorite way to practice gratitude, Laura. I'm gonna gift this to you if you want it. Acts of kindness. Do you maybe want to go through what an act of kindness can look like as a gratitude practice?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Acts of kindness is exactly what that says. To act kindly to someone, to something. So and it doesn't have to be anything major. Dr. Krista had mentioned earlier about recognizing and saying thank you if someone opens the door for you. How
Mhm.
about opening the door for someone else? Um, Something complimenting someone. I love this, and I do this a lot. I mean, total strangers in the store, and like I see they're wearing a really cute blouse or their hair looks amazing. I will actually go up to them and tell them. And I will tell you, I have never gotten, a scoff or a bad look. The smile that comes over that person's face is just beautiful. It makes my heart sing. And I know that they, have, I've enlightened their day as well because it's genuine and they feel that. So, just complimenting, helping a neighbor doing, say you see them, they're outside and maybe mowing the lawn or doing something. And if you have a little time, going over and asking, hey, is there something I can help you with? Or, hey, I'll go, start picking up things for them, or any little thing that is within your capacity to do. Even something a little bit larger like volunteering,
Mhm.
at a soup kitchen, at, some sort of Goodwill, or, in something in your community. Because I'll tell you, there are so many groups that are always looking for volunteers. Find something that is meaningful to you, or a group that you want to contribute to.
Mhm.
Sign up and do that, because recognizing recognition and appreciation with these acts really, it it enhances not just the person receiving, but you, the person giving, and it really fosters that sense of community, the interconnectedness. Again, it's just being a good neighbor and a strong community, which I think we need more of, in our recovery over the
Yeah.
last several years.
Yes, ma'am. That's, I think I'd be interesting, maybe we in the future do a webinar on the science of kindness. Because kindness in particular, kind acts, be it volunteering or some of the things you've listed, have in the same way gratitude has been studied. They've been studied to shift, and it's mostly around anxiety and depression. They've been studied for people who consistently engage with those activities and struggle with anxiety, depression. They've been shown to decrease scores. So quite literally through the action of being engaged with community and offering services to community, looking at the lowering of that. But I think that's a totally separate webinar, because right now we want to focus on gratitude and this 40-day challenge. But I think, Laura, have we missed any of kind of just little things that people can do, for the people who like to write, for the people that like to talk or listen, for the people that like to do? Are there any other thoughts we have in regards to little daily things that people can be doing for their gratitude challenge on the daily?
Well,
Question, because I don't know,
for
you're more organized than
for
I
those for those people, if you are into meditation, because we did say, okay, if you're not into meditation, it's really hard, and you have this big, this chatter brain, which, yeah, I I get that. But for those of you who do like, and want to get more into the meditative practice, that would be a mindful gratitude meditation. So this is really incorporating gratitude into your mindfulness or meditation sessions. And this would be focusing on the things that you are grateful for as you meditate. Let them fill your mind and saturate your thoughts to where uh, it it directly enhances the emotional well-being,
Mhm.
to improve that mental focus. So actually incorporating it into a meditation practice. And I will even take that as a step off for those people with the chattering brains, to sit there silently, can drive some of us a little nuts. And you're like, okay, what I do is I do a meditative walking, like
Hmm.
when I go for walks and have silence. For example, I like getting up early in the morning and going for a walk. And I was just telling my host yesterday, when I had gone for my walk, it was so beautiful and quiet. And still a little bit of cool dew in the air and the beautiful, the sunrise and the views, just absorbing that. That
Mhm.
is what I consider my walking meditation, and looking around at the beauty around me and the fact that I was outdoors walking, having some sun on my face, breathing fresh air.
Yeah,
So that can be worked into a type of uh, gratitude meditation.
love it. So now that we've gone over the how, let's kind of circle back and reinforce the why of this, right? Because you all tune in to hear about genetics, right? You're not here to hear us exclusively talk about gratitude. So the reason I want to pull this back, right? Because we're going to ask you to do these gratitude practices for 40 days, and we want you to start noticing what it changes, right? And here's how and why we're going to pull it back. Most of you, I would imagine, have your 360, your DNA 360. So most of you know, like maybe my detoxification systems, and by extension, kind of the immunity within my body is weak. Or maybe you know that like my hormones aren't the greatest, right? And maybe you see that in your life. And so that's something that you're working on. So what we want to do just quickly is touch on the areas that gratitude can influence, because we want you to be a little bit more mindful of those areas and see over the next 40 days with just simply thinking grateful thoughts, if that can shift anything. So let's quickly go over again the biology and the areas that gratitude can quite literally influence, which again still boggles my mind that different thoughts can do that. So first and foremost, sleep. How many of us struggle with sleep? So there are numerous studies that show that gratitude practice, again, daily gratitude practice, this isn't going to happen necessarily the first time, but daily gratitude practices will ease a person's ability to fall asleep. Okay. I think in particular, Dr. Lara, your favorite there is having people kind of brain dump and do some gratitude before to shift the mind space, right? But a lot of this can also go back to gratitude practices, increase serotonin, which afford a better feeling before bed. And they will also play around in positive ways with dopamine and that kind of pleasure centers within the brain. Yeah. Next, Laura, what's your next favorite physical benefit that gratitude offers?
Well, I wanted to mention more about improving sleep, because it's not just
Love it.
allowing or helping individuals fall asleep faster, but they also enjoy deeper, more restorative sleep.
Mm,
So, I mean, that's very, very important, you know.
mm,
And this was actually there were studies out in gratitude practices in applied psychology. It was a 2016 study that looked at gratitude practices and maintaining a gratitude journal, having it be associated with better sleep quality and duration.
mm.
So, I mean, really, of the four pillars of sleep: quantity, quality, regularity, and timing, that quantity and quality really important.
I love that.
So the regularity and timing you can control more, and by incorporating some sort of gratitude practice, especially before you go to bed, that can actually help increase the first two, your quantity and quality.
I love that. I love
So
that.
there was also okay, so, oh, you know what? I want to touch on the fact that you had said about the detox pathways. That's in our anti-inflammation reports. And what do you know? But gratitude actually helps with inflammation,
Mm,
actually lowering inflammation. And what they found, and this actually works into your immune response, that there were studies. Well, actually, first, let me speak specifically about the inflammation, then we'll jump into the immune system, because they are very closely related. But there was a study in 2015 in brain behavior and immunity, and it actually showed that gratitude correlates with lower inflammatory biomarkers. They happened to do their study on heart failure patients. So you can imagine that these patients have very high inflammatory markers. So if it can reduce theirs, how, the fact of doing it for someone who is not a heart failure patient, it's like, let's do some preventative measures, to lower that inflammation. And then there was a 2020 study in the International Journal of Behavioral Medicine that linked gratitude practices with reduced biomarkers of inflammation among patients with chronic illnesses. And that covers a lot of people nowadays.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anything else, anything we can do to help support, without giving more medications or more, intrusive therapies, heck, it's free.
Yeah. There's so many people that I think come to our webinars in part because they are struggling with chronic illnesses and sometimes therapies, et cetera, a little bit out of reach. And this is a very wonderfully accessible therapy and one that is shown to dramatically change or to shift markers within the body. So this isn't us being like, oh, your mind's gonna feel better. Your body will show evidence of this, which to me is such a wonderful little thing, in particular when you're struggling with a chronic illness and maybe don't know where to go with it. This is something that is across the board going to be helpful. Yeah, thank you for
And
explaining that.
even if you are healthy, there is research that has looked at both arms for ill individuals and healthy individuals. Research done in psychosomatic medicine that showed that people tend to have better immune responses when they have a grateful outlook. And they in particular looked at both healthy and ill individuals in their study. So, I mean, you don't have to have a problem. Like I said, again, you don't have to have a problem to do this. Use this as a preventative measure, as
Yeah.
well as a healing measure.
Yeah.
A recent study done in 2021, a study published in Psychoneuroendocrinology, it found that individuals who are engaged in regular gratitude practices showed enhanced immune responses, and they actually measured the immune cell activity.
Yeah.
So very direct. It's not anything that, you could fake or just say, oh yeah, I feel better. This was actual measurement. So this really can make changes, but that was in regular gratitude practice. And something I want to mention for all of the different gratitude practices that we mentioned, it's not like you only have to do one of them and only do that one thing over this time period that we are giving you as a challenge. You can do a few different ones, multiple, all on the same day. So, and we definitely encourage that, because the more you work that muscle, the stronger it gets.
Yeah. This is thankfully gratitude is not a muscle that you can fatigue where you have to give it a little bit of break in between. Yeah. So we have a question, Dr. Lara. I wonder if I can offer this question to you. Richard in our chat is asking, what are your personal suggestions for people who feel like maybe they're in a season of life where they don't feel like they have anything to be grateful for? And Richard, thank you for the question, because I can appreciate it. It might it might be tricky to kind of undertake gratitude when you're like, my world's blowing up around me. Dr. Laura, do you have personal suggestions there, or do you have any suggestions there?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Start with the most basic things. Do you have legs that walk? Are you mobile? Most people are. You can be grateful for that, the fact that you have, and I'm assuming, okay, maybe you don't, but if you do, be grateful that you have two healthy legs that can ambulate and move you around, because there are many people who don't. That you can take breaths, that you can breathe fresh air, that you can see the beauty of the earth around you, a flower. There are flowers, there are plants, whatever you find delightful. Look into that. Make it little, very simple. You don't have to look at, the craziness of the world. We all have that around us, challenges and other things. Get granular.
Mhm.
And it becomes easier. It's like pushing a domino. All you need is push that first one and then let it go.
Mhm.
So that's where I would start.
Mhm. Mhm.
Do you
And
have any other suggestions?
no, I love that. And I would also offer simply the commitment to start looking for things that you're grateful for, right? The commitment of once a day, I'm going to do this. Has it spilling over into your life? Because that first day, maybe you're going to have to really rack your brain and be like, I don't have legs that work, but maybe I have a hand that can either type this or write this, right? And maybe you have to scratch a little bit. But something that happens with exercise, right? You strengthen it, therefore you strengthen your awareness. And by doing that every day, you're going to notice a tiny bit more other little things because you're going to be searching for it within your day. And then I promise you'll start to discover these little things within your day that you're actually grateful for in part, and they exist. It's just maybe there wasn't the energy and effort to focus on them. Part of what gratitude practices, part of what exercising this muscle does for you is shift the way you perceive the world. And as you shift the way you perceive the world, you put more focus onto things you enjoy and less focus onto things you don't enjoy. And that's a little, and again, this is why these studies that Dr. Laura has beautifully quoted require that daily practice, because as you build that muscle, you build a different perception. And it's through that consistent perception of things that you enjoy, that you're grateful for, that confer all of these health benefits, that confer the shift in immunity, that confer the shift in how your brain is operating, right? That confer the shift in stress. Yeah. Yeah.
And, I want to say that in communication, remember how I had mentioned about community, relationships. Well, in that is communication. The gratefulness, here's a gratefulness idea for him, is that the fact that that you have a computer, that you are watching us right now, and that you could type your question in, allowing you the communication to be able to voice the interest of your questions and your wanting to move forward to find gratitude. That is something to be grateful for. And it reminds me of, I look at those who had or didn't have as much. For example, Helen Keller. She was blind, she was deaf, yet look what she has accomplished. She has said, alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much. And it was through the people that helped her, that taught her how to sign, that helped her to learn how to communicate. What an inspiration. So the fact that you already are able to communicate is so amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for that question and for the connection and for that ability and for you to be here. So thank you.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And interestingly, some of, there's always this thought that it's money and circumstance, et cetera, that will lend happiness. And of course, there's truth to it, right? Science says you need so much money in order to live comfortably. But I find it very interesting, in particular, some of the clients that I work with that, kind of sit up in that 1%. There's a chunk of them that when we talk through gratitude, it's always the small things. Very rarely has it anything to do with the larger, bigger things in life. It often sits around, oh, I have good health today. Or, oh, wow, I got to play with my grandchild. Or, oh, wow, I got to do this. It's the little things. And so I don't say that to dismiss or say, like, you need certain things, and if you're going through a rough patch of life, um that's any easier. But it is to say that often when people sit in their best parts of their life, a lot of the times the gratitude boils down to more or less the same things that you might be clawing for right now in the season of your life. Yeah, okay. So we have some other questions here. Uh, Lara, I'm going to offer this one to you again. Happy to support as well. So Lara, you mentioned strong social relationships being a contributor to longevity. Um, and when you're trying to keep gratitude mindset, how detrimental is the opposite? So for example, instead, if you were practicing what's the opposite of gratitude? Dissatisfaction. If you're practicing dissatisfaction, how is that going to impact your health?
Yeah. Well, actually, I also, and just reading the question, because this gentleman also had mentioned about what about being around negative people? How is that impacting when you're trying to be grateful, and social connections, positive social connections? And okay, well, what about if you have negative, people around you? How can that impact your longevity? Well, first of all, it really impacts psychologically in the fact that of your stress response. When you are interacting with negative individuals, this can really trigger that stress response in the body, increasing that sympathetic nervous system and releases stress hormones like cortisol, okay, which we've talked about, which we said gratitude helps to lower. So, I mean, if you're trying to have gratitude and then you're around some negative people, it's this constant push pull, with having those cortisol levels. And especially when it starts getting into chronic stress, that can lead to health issues, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, a weakened immune system, and obviously can affect your overall lifespan. But also looking at the mental health aspect. When you are exposed to negativity, that really starts moving into that negative energy. Remember, I said, where thoughts go, energy flows. And there has been some incredible research done by Dr. Emoto in Japan on water crystallization, where he put energy, like actually words, like you think and say love, to a vial of water, and then hate and fear into another vial. And when he actually crystallized it, it looked like a snowflake. The loved one, absolutely beautiful. The intricacy, it was gorgeous. The hate and fear, it was a splatter. So even thoughts and energies and words can impact someone, physiologically, biologically. And in those conditions, this is where we need to love ourselves enough to separate ourselves from these negative relationships or the negative environments, and really support ourselves with the gratitude, with the happy thoughts, and find people,
Yeah.
get relationships that are more positive, that give you and make you feel elevated, make you feel good.
There's a lot of more and more research that goes into communication between the brain and the gut. And there's some interesting studies that look at when people are in states of fear or more negative states, the brain actually stops feeding the gut appropriately. And so it looks at how certain, especially more negative emotional states that can be fed, good sir, by your question, right? That focus on dissatisfaction instead of satisfaction. And that will shift how your body supports your microbiome in a negative way. And we know that our microbiome, when fed properly, when supported properly, is the conduit to the immune system, to inflammation or reduction of inflammation and other such things. So it can be quite literally demonstrated at this interface that says, this is how I'm going to engage with the world, right? Your thought patterns will quite literally influence your biome. And we know we have multiple webinars on how important the biome is. So I would offer the opposite is as true. And I'd be curious, I haven't dove as deep into this research, but I'd be curious to see what more positive thought patterns, if that then in turn feeds the biome in a way that negative will not. Yeah. So we have some other questions here. Oh, I saw a look in your face. What were you going to say before
Yeah,
I
no,
answered the
actually, one
question?
of the questions, Richard asks, are you aware of any case studies to your knowledge of mindset helping individuals overcome disease or it contributing to their recovery of disease, addiction, or otherwise? And actually, yes. One in particular, there is a cancer recovery. A study that was conducted by the University of Miami found that breast cancer patients who participated in supportive therapy sessions, which included things like expressing emotions, fostering positive attitudes, things like what we were talking about and listed earlier in this webinar, it showed a significant reduction in distress and an improved immune response compared to those who did not participate. There was also an individual case, a story of Norman Cousins, who famously battled heart disease and a painful spinal condition through a regimen of laughter and vitamin C, and asserting that that positive attitude was the key to his recovery process. So talking about addiction, because this is a thing that, you know, we deal with, people coming to us, you know, looking at their mood and behavior profiles and addictions that they are working through. That gratitude, yes, absolutely can help. A study, there was a research in the field of addiction that actually showed that individuals who exhibit a stronger belief in their ability to succeed in recovery, often referred to as like a self-efficacy, they actually have higher rates of overcoming that addiction. And there was a study published in the Journal of Addictive Behaviors that highlighted that self-efficacy is a significant predictor of success in quitting things like smoking and having that sustained abstinence. You know, I mean, there are so many different things. For example, for chronic diseases, you know, again, I had mentioned earlier, so many people dealing with chronic diseases. Well, at Stanford University, there was a study that found patients with chronic diseases who underwent self-management programs. And this included things like problem solving, decision making, resource utilization, you know, being resourceful. Okay. It demonstrated improved disease management and better mental health outcomes over those who received standard care. So, I mean, and that's just a tiny sprinkling of studies that have been done on how these types of practices can actually help to improve recovery of disease and, you know, of these major problems.
Yeah, I love that answer. Thank you. Our next question here, Apollo Neuro, which is a device, a biomedic device that you can wear, found that the practice of gratitude lowers depression and anxiety. They also say that it will enhance empathy and lower aggression. Thoughts on that? So effectively, there's a company that takes a lot of bio data from their clients and does research on it, and they're saying that gratitude will reduce instances of depression, anxiety, as well as enhance a sense of empathy and kind of agitation or aggression that one has with the world. And I think I would offer that all of the studies we presented tonight and research definitely found this. Yeah, I don't know if it's per se as robust as we would all want it to be, but it is definitely founded. that practices of gratitude will decrease anxiety and depression, and separately enhance the way you feel about the world. So enhance your empathy and the ability for you to get along with one another, and then decrease the need to be agitated or aggressive with other people in your world. Absolutely.
Yeah, and when you consider devices like Apollo Neuro,
Mhm.
okay, the V-Relief by Hoolist, things like this, it actually it works on vibrations, almost like a touch therapy.
Mhm.
If any of you have heard of EFT, emotional freedom technique, a tapping,
Mhm.
okay, and what that does is it actually works with soothing vibrations, these frequencies that work into calming the body. Again, I had mentioned this before, the vagal tone, the vagus nerve, that is directly impacting and stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system. This is the rest and digest. This
Mhm.
is the state in which healing occurs. So, when you are triggering and working at those frequencies and using techniques, whether it is through actual, like physical tapping or using these types of devices, that's the science behind it. So, very much so, they are wonderful devices that can, I know anecdotally through several clients, as well as myself, have gotten benefits from.
Mhm. Mhm. All right, this next question, I think we're gonna tackle a lot with this, and I think maybe we both answer, because I would imagine there's many different answers to this question. We have someone said, um, and I would venture they might be an American, but there's also other parts of the world they're probably spawning from. How do you deal with global negativity right now? So it's absolutely everywhere. We're inundated by the news that says the world's blowing up. We spend our lives online and we cannot really avoid it. How are you guys navigating it is effectively the question. Um, Dr. Lara, would you like to go first, or shall I?
Go ahead, I'll let you take it this one first.
Sure. So I would offer there's an element of, first and foremost, when it comes to my news, I'm very specific as to finding neutral news sources. So news sources where it is their mission to offer just facts and not to offer editorial atop that, because sometimes I find that can help decrease kind of the anxiety provoking language, right? News organizations use a lot of psychology to figure out how do we keep people within our environments, how do we keep them, because they make their money off of advertising dollars. Nothing wrong with that, but their goal is to keep you within. And so I do my best to find news outlets that very purposely strip their language and don't make it emotional. It's just fact-based. Okay, so that's one way. I'm also very specific as to only allow myself so much time per day on social media and other news vehicles, just because, again, you can get lost in it. They have algorithms that pull you in and can doom scrolling is a thing, right? So being very mindful about that. And then I think the balance also needs to be considered as to, you do need to consume and understand what's going on in the world around you within limits, but that does need to happen. But that should also be balanced by positivity within your worlds. And I think this is really, a help of gratitude practices where that can come in, right? There's an element of balance. Of course, there's negative things going on in the world. That's never going to change, but we can really practice gratitude and other sort of meditative techniques that have our attention also skewed or primed towards the less negative. So there's an element of balance and an element where I'm not just exercising the negative muscles that a lot of news would have you exercising, also exercising some of the more positive muscles like gratitude and empathy that we've just gone through. And we're inviting you into the 40-day challenge. Dr. Lara, how do you go about this? Do you have some other techniques that you employ?
Absolutely. And one in particular, really this prayer encompasses it. It's called the Serenity Prayer.
Mm.
And it says, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That really is very important to think about, all the craziness of the world, that we are one person, and very rarely can one person change the world. Okay. But what we can do is we can change ourselves first. How are we? How are we to ourselves? How are we to those around us? How are we to those, of those people further out that may not physically be with us? Being the example, and being kind, the acts of kindness, okay? Giving it forward, doing the good. If it starts with us, it's like a ripple effect. And that in itself can make change. So even though we may not be able to change these larger, issues of the world, we can change our immediate environment. So, and then where you can get out and make beneficial changes, on a larger scale, okay, you can do that. But it's putting a positive step forth and not have to be victim to the world around us. So that's a major thing. And as far as like, okay, what do we do with, what can we do? So like I was saying, if you want to start trying to make a difference in positive thought, in group intention, there is a brilliant woman, Lynn McTaggart, who was still is, a journalist. And she actually has been working with scientists. She wrote the book, The Power of Eight. And this book delves into the concept of group intention and potential effects on individuals, on communities, and really looking at as an overview of the scientific aspects of how this works. And not just that, but actually documenting these experiments, where not only did, in these intention sessions, okay, not only did they make changes at a local level, but even at a larger city level, that were measurable. I'm not going to go into all the details because I really would encourage you. It is a fantastic book. It's called The Power of Eight by Lynn McTaggart. So don't ever underestimate the power that you have through your actions and thoughts.
I like that. I like that a lot, because I think that balances out the idea of being mindful of what you consume and then being mindful of what you offer out. I like that a lot. All right. We have two questions that are sitting before us, both of which are fun. Someone has asked, and I think Dr. Lara, we've briefly started to talk about this. The person is asking, how would you guide a person that has negative self-talk and low self-esteem? Right. I'll kind of, if you're open to it, I'll kind of start in a larger sense and then allow you to drill down into some more specific practices. Sure. But I would offer there's an element of this negative self-talk is learned. It's a very, very, very well practiced and strong muscle within your brain. Okay, so there's an element of kind of taking a step back and recognizing that this isn't something that your brain per se was born to be. There's an element of this was learned over the course of your life. And thankfully, science emphatically, entirely, collectively resounds and proclaims that your brain is very, very changeable. it can grow, it can change its connections, right? We look at BDNF as one of the ways of gauging how easy it is for some individuals to change their brain connection. And so it is very possible to change how your brain muscle, the exercises, right? How these pathways are connected, and it can be changed. Now, I would offer one of the first things I would say is there needs to be a commitment to doing this. Again, because to go back to the push-ups, I asked Dr. Lara to do 50 push-ups today. Her answer is no. But if I said, hey, if you practice, can you do 50 push-ups? And her answer is yes. But there has to be that practice and that discipline in between. So really recognizing some of these thought patterns are just, you've been doing the wrong exercises, and that's okay. We have to bring in some new exercises that can unlearn old exercises and then relearn new exercises, right? And gratitude being one of them. So I would allow Dr. Lara maybe to get into a few more specifics, but my first thought would be, first of all, recognizing that it's a muscle, and recognizing that if you change how you exercise your muscle, if you commit to that practice, it very much can be changed. And I would also recommend getting a cat, and then they will teach you differently as well.
Emotional support animals, absolutely. I have two
So
dogs.
much research behind this. So much
Yes.
research behind it.
Absolutely.
They remind me every day as I tend to their needs.
Well,
Dr. Laura, what are some exercises you would think and suggest there?
yeah, definitely getting a little more granular into, how would we guide a person that has that negative self-talk and self-esteem? First of all, acknowledge their feelings. You really need to acknowledge the feelings without judgment. It's okay. They're not damaged, or, there's nothing wrong as far as feeling like that. Giving that understanding and empathy, that can really help to build trust and open communication. Because the fact is, they are looking for help, because otherwise they would never be in front of you and you would never know. So obviously they are asking for help, for you to be aware of it. The second thing would be to encourage self-reflection. Encourage them to explore the origins of their negative self-talk. Like Dr. Krista was saying, this is a learned behavior. Walk it back. Identify the specific triggers. What specific situations and thoughts trigger that negative self-talk? And it really gets into understanding the patterns. Are there common themes or patterns in their negative thoughts about themselves? So trying to really zone in on specifics with this. And then also challenge the negative thoughts, help them challenge and reframe, these ideations. So I will say that there is evidence against negative claims. So really, it's a matter of asking them to consider, whether they would say that they're telling themselves to a friend. Like, okay, if you were talking to a friend, what would you say if they were saying this about them? All of a sudden that perception changes, and they're not so hard, on that person. So if not, then why are they saying it to themselves? Allow and give them some balanced thinking. This is really important because you want to help them practice balanced thoughts. So that way they're not overly negative, they're not overly positive, but having that more objective, realistic thought patterns. Just let's start shifting. And then, like Dr. Krista was saying, and as we have been talking about with gratitude, working into these positive affirmations, like when we were talking about having that jar and putting, grateful things. And I had mentioned, put some wonderful things that you have done, that you have accomplished, that you love about yourself. Okay. And I would say work with them to create those positive affirmations that directly counteract their negative self-talk. You want to be able, to give them something to augment their arguments as far as, saying, okay, well, you said this, but we have this. So let's make it a little bit more uneven field until we can get more positive. And different things of setting small achievable goals. Low self-esteem can actually be improved by setting and achieving little goals, these tiny habits, these baby steps. Little successes lead to big successes, and make sure that they identify these areas and they feel that sense of accomplishment. They get more confident that these goals are attainable, because success builds confidence, builds success, and it is just a snowball effect. So really encourage them to get out and broaden those social interactions, like we had mentioned, are so important for health and longevity. And depending on if you are a professional or not, if you're not, have them seek professional help, because you wouldn't want, and you don't ever know the severity of it, but definitely encouraging them to speak with someone, a counselor or a therapist. Some cognitive behavioral therapy or some other therapeutic techniques can certainly be very effective, but you want to have someone who knows what they're doing for that. So, and then of course, the mindfulness, meditation, gratitude, that's always something that maybe you could even do with them.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that's a beautiful point maybe to conclude our chats here today. So I would encourage you, I hope you'd love to join in our 40-ish days of gratitude practice. The powers that be are going to send out an invitation for early September. That's why I'm saying 40-ish for early September. And we'd love to have you all join us in a room. Anyone can chat and share what it has changed. So again, reflecting back on, we know that it will impact your immune system, your sleep, your mental wellness. There's so many different parameters that this could kind of tickle and shake up a little bit. So please do join us in about 40 days. We'd love to see you. I really, really want to give Dr. Lara such a warm-hearted thank you. She's our Dean of Students at the DNAU, and so she's such a wealth of knowledge and just a resource. Anytime I'm like, hey, have you heard about a study that pertains to this? And she's like, well, actually, I know 5. So thank you so very much for coming and being able to index all the studies and then some. So I'm very, very, very grateful for you. You are amongst the people I texted when we were thinking through gratitude. And so to our audience, we're also very grateful for you. Between Dr. Lara and I know we're both very mission-based and we're very passion-driven. And so it's you and it's this community and it's supporting people's wellness. So thank you for being here and for fueling all our passion for wellness. And we really, really, really hope that you guys have a delightful evening, day, morning, whatever part of the globe you're calling in from. We really, really hope that you're doing well. And thank you so very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. True gratitude for all.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Au revoir.